I couldn't trust my own eyes. There was Caroline, my partner of 4 years, bare-chested sitting on another man's lap in the hot tub. Below their expressions left no doubt that they were involved in intimate activities. Fuming with anger, I hastily recorded a short video on my phone, despite considering changing into swim trunks. I ultimately decided against it, opting instead to sit in the room and contemplate why she hadn't wanted me at the party. Caroline had been working as a secretary of Air Funds, a hedge fund company, for about a year, and she had always seemed genuinely happy in her job. Now the reason for her contentment became painfully clear. Earlier that week, I had stumbled upon a text on her phone about a company Christmas party with a +1 invitation. When I confronted her about it, she tried to dissuade me, citing concerns about potential boredom from discussions about finance. Perplexed, I asked her she was embarrassed to be seen with me. She reassured me, explaining that it wasn't about harassment, but rather the anticipated dull conversations about money. At the event, the monthly parties hosted by her company were typically for staff, only resulting in Caroline often being away until late at night or the next day, while I had never made a fuss about it before. Now I had gained insight into what transpired at these gatherings. I responded with a resigned acknowledgement. She then mentioned that if I decided to attend, I should make sure my tuxedo was cleaned. However, she cautioned me, expressing doubt that I would enjoy the event on the day itself. She suggested I bring swim trunks, and I questioned the appropriateness of swim trunks for December Christmas party. She explained that the parties usually ended up at her boss's penthouse after the main event, which featured a nice hot tub. I acknowledged her revelation, and she confessed that this was pretty much a regular occurrence. She then asked me to promise to behave impeccably that night, to which I assured her that I always do, though. To my turn, one might have hinted otherwise. Curious, I questioned why she was sharing this information with me. She explained that these parties could sometimes get out of hand, and she didn't want me to be caught off guard, mentioning that some of the men there could be overly familiar. I prayed for potential issues, asserting that as long as everything passed the husband test, there shouldn't be any problems in response. She simply smiled and kissed me on the cheek without saying a word. At the main party, Caroline introduced me to her friend Gabriella, introducing me as her husband. Gabriella smiled at me and, jerking, questioned the term husband, implying that the night was going to be entertaining, referring to Caroline as a lively and adventurous woman intrigued by Gabrielle's remark. I glanced at Caroline. It responded with a playful smile and giggle. She mentioned she needed to mingle and asked Gabriel to join her in getting some drinks, specifically requesting wine. Without a backward glance, they depart. Had I made my way to the bar, ordered Caroline's wine, and got myself a beer, despite scanning the room. Caroline was nowhere to be seen. I searched for her, but found no trace. After half an hour, I settled at an empty table, hoping she would come looking for me. Meanwhile, I watched the lively dance floor, feeling overlooked as people passed by me, as if I were invisible. It appeared she was correct. I wasn't enjoying myself, and my frustration mounted as my wife seemed to have deserted me. After nursing my beer for a couple of hours, I made the decision to call it a night. If Caroline wasn't going to spend time with me, I would head home and leave her to enjoy the company of her friends. As I made my way towards the exit, Caroline and Gabriella approached, accompanied by 3 other men, one of whom had his arm around Caroline's waist. Caroline skipped formalities, greeting me with a slightly intoxicated "oh, there you are" when she kissed me. I detected the taste of tequila along with something else I mentioned. I was about to leave since she had left me alone for the past 2 hours, and I asked where she had been. Caroline blushed, avoiding eye contact, while the men smirked, and I chose not to confront them. Gabriel explained that they had been taking a few shots. Caroline appeared puzzled by Gabriel's explanation, leaving me intrigued about the situation. I asked Caroline about the shots, noting the taste of tequila, and something else. She dismissed it, saying they were heading to Lucas's place, where the hot tub was warming up, and she asked if I was ready to go. I responded affirmatively, and inquired if I would get to spend some time with her, or if she planned to leave me again that night. She reassured me not to be silly, and mentioned that I would see her later. She decided to ride with Gabriella and the men. So Jesse, it was fine for me to follow. I suggested she ride with me, but one of the men grouted Caroline's hand and pulled her away further, aggravating me. They left with Caroline and Gabriella Trey. Laying behind the men, laugh her at cowing as they departed. I got into my car and followed them upon arrival. I spotted Caroline in a bikini, leaving me perplexed as we reached the destination. She was already in the hot tub, with two men later identified as Lucas and Henry, the senior partners in the firm. They exuded an air of wealthy frat boys. After they went outside, Gabriel approached me and asked if I thought we could meet up later that night. I responded by questioning what gave her the impression I would be interested, emphasizing my marital status. She seemed surprised, citing Caroline's interactions with other men, especially the way Caroline had kissed me earlier, leading her to believe we had an open mirage. Confused, I asked what she meant by Caroline's earlier kiss. Gabriella revealed that Caroline had already been intimate with Lucas and Henry, leaving me utterly disgusted. A wave of nausea washed over me, and Gabriella's expression shifted as she realized my shock. She exclaimed, "Oh my God, I didn't know, did you?" I admitted I didn't, and inquired how long this had been happening. Gabriella disclosed that it had been going on ever since Caroline joined the company over a year ago. Shocked, I struggled to process the information, realizing Caroline had been involved with them the entire time. Without my knowledge, I questioned if that was what she was up to at the party. Gabriella confirmed that Caroline had been involved with two men and several others, expressing apologies and assuming I was aware of the situation. She reassured me that Caroline genuinely loved me, to which I responded sarcastically, expressing doubt about her love. Gabriella suggested I go upstairs and change, hoping Caroline would keep herself in check with my presence. I scoffed at the idea but complied, heading upstairs. That's when I caught sight of her with those two men. Despite my deep affection for her, I found the sight unbearable and resolved to confront her as I descended the stairs. Caroline greeted me as I reached. At the bottom, questioning why I wasn't in my bathing suit and if I intended to join them in the hot tub. I seized her arm, ushered her into a nearby room, and shut the door firmly behind us, demanding to know if she had ever intended to disclose our supposedly open marriage arrangement to me. I recounted what Gabriella had revealed and played a video on my phone, displaying her with the two men in the hot tub. I pressed her for an explanation, pondering if her intentions were to further degrade me after abandoning me at the party. Caroline attempted to downplay the situation, insisting they were simply having a good time, confessing to engaging in intimate acts with them, and asserting it meant nothing. I was appalled, vehemently disagreeing and emphasizing the significance of her actions. I removed my wedding ring and placed it in her hand, then took off her rings from her left hand. She questioned my actions, and I informed her that I found her behavior repugnant, expressing my profound disdain. Towards her, I bid her a sarcastic Merry Christmas, informing her of my plans to consult a Divhor warrior on Monday, and instructing her not to bother returning home. Despite her pleas and professions of love, I remained unmoved, declaring my indifference and stating that her desires no longer mattered to me. I made it clear that I was aware of the truth and understood why she had kept me from accompanying her, with a final goodbye to Caroline. I departed, leaving one of the men uncertain. He called out to me, questioning my abrupt departure and complimenting Caroline. I responded casually, indicating that she was now their responsibility, and exited the penthouse, descending to the ground floor. I headed to my car and drove home. Despite Caroline's persistent calls and texts, I disregarded her attempts to contact me upon reaching home. I raised her messages and bought her number, changing out of my tuxedo. I grabbed some trash bags and began collecting her belongings, tossing them into the bags, loading to hem into her car. I pulled it out of the garage, removing the garage door opener and changing the access code. I ensured she couldn't re-enter the house. By this time, it was around 2:45 a.m. And exhaustion weighed heavily on me. Collapsing onto the bed, I drifted into a deep sleep. Instantly, the next morning, I was stirred awake by the ringing of our house phone. I picked it up instinctively. "Hello," I answered, and it was Caroline on the other end asking me to come and pick her up. Yeah, that's not my concern anymore, I replied coldly. She pleaded for conversation, but I stood firm, insisting that any further communication should go through my lawyer. I informed her about her car being in my parking space packed with all her belongings, and then I hung up. Despite her immediate callback, I disconnected the house phone with no desire to face her or hear her voice again. I collapsed back onto the bed and drifted back to sleep, plugging the phone back in. When I finally woke up enough to think straight that afternoon, I glanced outside and noticed that her car was no longer there. Good, I thought to myself. Maybe she finally got the message. I turned to the internet and began searching for a divorce, LE. All year educating myself on the divorce laws in our state. It was a community property state, but since we didn't own any real estate, that wouldn't complicate matters with no children between us. Child support wouldn't be an issue either. Given that she earned as much, if not more than me, I doubted there would be any alimony involved. Further research revealed that while most divorces in our state were no fault, there was a provision to file based on grounds such as infidelity, cruelty, or misuse. This would potentially make the divorce process more expensive and lengthy. But I was unconcerned about that. After my search, I made a note of the number for Gonzalez's attorney at law, intending to give her a call on Monday while jotting down notes. My cell phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number, considering it could be Caroline or anyone else. I had to answer a female voice, introduced herself as Gabriella, and informed me that Caroline was staying with her for a few days. I affirmed my decision to proceed with divorce. Gabrielle expressed worry for Caroline, describing her as distraught, secluded in her room, and on the verge of a breakdown. I remained indifferent, asserting that Caroline had brought this upon herself. Gabriella pressed about any lingering feelings I might have for Caroline, to which I responded with my current sentiments of hatred and disgust. I emphasized Caroline's year-long infidelity and her audacity to publicly humiliate me, concluding that our relationship was irreparable. Gabriella mentioned Caroline's love for me, but I met her assertion with skepticism, questioning in Caroline's actions before ending the call. I inquired about what occurred after I left and during their stay at the penthouse. Seeking clarity, Gabriel acknowledged that they all gathered to consult Caroline after my departure, suggesting that I could have had a pleasant evening if I had stayed. I expressed this belief, questioning the integrity of individuals like her, and then bid her goodbye, ending the call after ending. The call. I noticed 2 text messages from unfamiliar numbers that had arrived while I was asleep upon checking. I discovered videos attached to them. One message read, "Missed, one hell of the party, bro." I played the video and witnessed Carolyn engaging in intimate activities with 3 men at the penthouse, with Lucas and Henry being identifiable. The third person was unknown to me, a man I didn't recognize. Looked into the camera and remarked, "What a hot wife you have." Then with a smirk, he added, "What a pity that you are not here." The second video was similar, except Carolyn exclaimed to one of the men, "It's so big! Give it to me quickly," while looking at the camera with a grin. My disdain for her only intensified. I transferred the videos to my PC and made a copy for the lawyer. I contemplated sending the videos to all of her friends and family, but decided against it, at least for the time being. Information I obtained from Emma's website indicated that I needed to exercise caution in how I reacted to her actions. Any negative response on my part could easily undermine my case. Her advice resonated with me, so I opted to hold off throughout the remainder of that day. The next, I heard nothing from Carolyn or Gabriella, which I deemed a positive development. I spent the rest of the weekend purging Caroline's presence from the apartment. On Monday, I contacted my boss, explaining the situation and requesting a brief vacation. Music understanding the emotional toll of such circumstances. My boss, who had also experienced a divorce due to an unfaithful partner, empathized with me. I promptly reached out to Emma's office and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. En route to the appointment, I visited the bank to begin disentangling Caroline from our joint accounts. I settled our joint credit card and subsequently canceled it, withdrawing half of our assets to establish a new account solely in my name. During the meeting with Emma, she provided a thorough explanation of the divorce laws in our state. She proposed pursuing an alienation of affection lawsuit against Caroline's employers. Despite the uncertain outcome given the evidence I possessed, I entrusted Emma with the decision regarding the delivery of legal papers. I outed for serving them at their office, intending for them to experience a fraction of the public humiliation they had subjected me to over the past year. After finalizing arrangements with Emma and paying a retainer, I headed home. On the way, I received a call from Gabriella tentatively. I answered. She suggested a meeting with Caroline that afternoon, but I declined, following my attorney's advice to maintain distance. However, Gabriella offered Caroline's contact information. After consulting with someone, I provided Emma's details instead. Despite Gabriel's attempts to advocate for Caroline, I firmly rejected any possible forgiveness, asserting that Caroline could anticipate divorce papers. Soon after concluding the call, I headed home, making a brief stop to purchase an 8-pack of beer and a couple of packs of cigarettes. Although I had quit smoking when we first got married, I felt the need to engage in something to prevent destructive behavior. Upon returning home, the house phone rang, and recognizing the voice as Lucas Russell, my wife's employer, had answered with a curt greeting meeting. Lucas spoke in a more professional tone compared to the party, acknowledging my upset feelings about the events. On Friday, he claimed they had assumed I was fine with my wife's activities at company gatherings. I questioned if he knew she was married throughout all this, and he admitted yes, but explained that Caroline had told them we had an open marriage, leading them to believe it was acceptable. I pointed out that he never bothered to confirm this with me, and inquired about the videos they sent me on Friday night. Lucas admitted the videos with Caroline's idea and offered an apology, expressing regret for the situation. He asked if there was anything he could do to make amends, and I seized the opportunity to outline my terms. I mentioned my intention to take legal action against him, including kicking his proverbial balls into the middle of next week after his testimony in court, and suing him for alienation of affection. I made it clear that if he truly wanted to make amends, he should accept my terms without arguments. He asked if I was genuinely considering suing them, to which I affirmed, emphasizing their breach of their own moral clauses over the past year, leading to the destruction of my marriage. He dismissed it as harmless fun, claiming they never intended to harm my marriage. I questioned his expectations, expressing disbelief that I would commend them for their actions. He pleaded, suggesting we could resolve the situation together, and expressing concern the lawsuit could ruin them. I dismissed his concerns as not my problem and ended the call grabbing a beer before heading to the balcony for a smoke. I didn't hear from them until Wednesday, when they were served at Caroline's office. Gabrielle expressed disbelief at my actions, insisting I didn't give Caroline a chance to explain and highlighting her current humiliation. I remained indifferent, stating that I didn't care about Caroline's feelings after what she did, and instructed Gabriella not to call again. I slammed the phone down a few moments later. I received another call from a number I recognized as coming from Lucas's office. I answered yelling, and he insulted me. Threatening physical violence, he accused me of ruining his life and vowed to retaliate. I slammed the phone down and immediately called Emma to inform her of Lucas's threat. Could she said, "I'll file for a temporary restraining order against Caroline in her courts today. I'll make sure you get a copy of the order. But remember what I said. Don't do anything stupid. What if he comes after me?" I asked, "Make sure you have witnesses and don't instigate anything." She replied. I assured her I understood. Later that afternoon, there was a knock on the door. Or true to her word, Emma had fed the restraining order, and a courier had just delivered my copy. Wanting to hedge my bet somewhat, I purchased a small motion-activated camera to cover my front room, just in case Lucas or his accomplices intended to follow through on their threats. I needed evidence and some means of protection. Things remained relatively peaceful for the rest of the week. Thankfully, I didn't hear anything from Gabriella Caroline or her boyfriends. Until Saturday night, I was sitting on my balcony nursing a beer and a cigarette when I heard my doorbell, followed by pounding on the door. I quickly extinguished my cigarette and made my way to the front room. Peering through the PO, I confirmed it was indeed Lucas, accompanied by someone else. As the pounding persisted, he shouted for me to open up, accusing me of violating a restraining order. I informed him that I was calling the police, but he protested vehemently, demanding I open the door. Ignoring his demands, I dialed emergency serve. Vices upon connecting with the operator. I relayed the situation unfolding at my doorstep. The operator assured me that they had received multiple calls from my area and dispatched cruisers to my location. They advised me against opening the door until the officers arrived, and I thanked them before ending the call. The pounding continued, and I braced myself, clutching the bat tighter, wondering if Lucas intended to break down the door. Moments later, I heard a commotion peering through the peel. Once more, I witnessed two large police officers apprehending Lucas and his companion, placing handcuffs on them after the commotion subsided. There was a knock on my door. I cautiously opened it, and the officer identified themselves as police. I handed them a copy of my restraining M. After reading it, the officer spoke into their radio and informed me that they would be taking Lucas and his companion downtown. For the night, I explained my side of the story, and the officer thanked me for my cooperation expressi, and confidence that Lucas wouldn't trouble me for a while. Once they left, I locked the door and returned to my balcony, cracking open a fresh beer. The news of Lucas's arrest made headlines the following day, with a headline reading, "Hedge Fund CEO Arrested Over the Next Few Days." Articles revealed that several clients were leaving F due to the company's involvement in ruining employees' marriages, impacting their bottom line. I thought good returning to work the following Monday. It was challenging, but I managed to get some work done after about 3 weeks of no contact. I received a call from Emma. She greeted me warmly and asked how I was holding up. I replied that I was doing as well as could be expected. Emma informed me that Caroline had obtained an attorney, and they petitioned the court for marriage counseling. The judge had agreed, ordering 6 sessions. Starting that week, I inquired if they could mandate marriage counseling, and Emma affirmed that they could. She advised me to attend, explaining that not showing up could result in contempt of court and even jail. Reluctantly, I agreed. Expressing my unwillingness to reconcile with Caroline, Emma understood, but emphasized the importance of my attendance. She mentioned that if the counselor perceived no hope for reconciliation, it would inform the judge. I asked if there was anything else, and Emma revealed that Caroline's attorney informed her of Caroline's pregnancy, frustrated at the ECT of waiting another 8 or 9 months for any legal actions. I expressed my frustration. Emma confirmed this delay, adding that if a child is mine, I would be ordered to pay child support. On a somewhat positive note, she informed me that the judge approved a legal separation until Caroline gives birth, I sarcastically commented, and Emma provided the counsel's address, wishing me luck. I resolved to make my stance unequivocally clear. There was no chance of reconciliation with the cheater. Upon arriving at the counselor's office, I was promptly ushered in. A somewhat older woman peered at me over her glasses as Caroline sat across from her, looking somewhat dejected on the love seat. I couldn't shake the ominous feeling setting in. The counselor, Dr. Charles Robinson, introduced herself and gestured for me to take a seat. I chose a smaller wooden chair, positioned at a 55 angle to the love seat. Next to Caroline, I expressed my reluctance to be present, to which Dr. Robinson acknowledged, but expressed gratitude for my attendance. She then turned to Caroline, inquiring about her hopes for the sessions. Caroline voiced her desire to reunite with me, citing the impending arrival of the baby and the longing to be a family. I couldn't help but scoff, and Dr. Robinson redirected her attention to me, asking about my expectations. I reiterated that reconciliation was off the table, especially considering the betrayal, noticing Caroline's recoil at my words. Dr. Charlotte nodded, acknowledging my stance. She then questioned if I would consider it for the sake of the child. I emphasized my skepticism about paternity, but affirmed my commitment to support the child of proven mine. However, I firmly stated that reconciliation with Caroline was out of the question. In response to her persistent inquiry about the child's welfare, I took out my phone and showed Dr. Sharot the videos that had been sent to me, hoping to illustrate the depth of betrayal after watching the videos. Dr. Charlotte appeared visibly disgusted, and as I pocketed my phone, I couldn't help but comment on her marital status. I questioned how she would feel if the roles were reversed, if it were her husband in those videos, emphasizing the continuous betrayal, spanning over a year even in front of her. However, she insisted that the focus should be on us and the upcoming child. I then reminded Dr. Sharot that Caroline had a child to consider, expressing my doubts about paternity and my need for answers from Caroline. After a moment of consideration, Dr. Charlotte nodded and suggested that Caroline ed me some explanations. Caroline, he, looking down and appearing sheepish, finally met my gaze and agreed to provide answers. Dr. Charlotte then gave me the floor to speak, and I turned back to Caroline. I asked if she knew what was going to happen on the night of the party, and she confirmed. I pressed further questioning if that was the real reason she didn't want me to go, and she admitted it. Reflecting on the ordeal, I accused them of planning to humiliate me, to which Caroline reluctantly agreed. I continued my line of questioning, probing if the intention was to humiliate me even further at Lucas's place, and she confirmed, appearing sheepish. I then questioned Caroline about the duration of her involvement with the other men, Dave, to which she admitted it had been ongoing since she joined the company. Puzzled, I asked for the reason behind her actions, to which she casually replied that she enjoyed it, finding it fun, naughty, and exciting, making her feel desired. When I inquired about the number of men she had been with, excluding me, he nonchalantly mentioned around 3 or 4 dozen. I was stunned by the revelation, stressing the potential risks of contracting venereal diseases. Hater, I demanded to know if she knew the father of the child she was carrying, to which she admitted uncertainty. I confronted her expectation for me to raise and financially support the child, criticizing her and expressing my lack of love for her anymore. My resentment was palpable, and I even found myself hoping for a negative outcome. Caroline and the others seemed taken aback by my words, and Caroline appeared on the verge of tears. However, my anger remained unyielding as I attempted to inflict more emotional pain. Sensing the escalating tension, Charlotte intervened, signaling that I had made my point, despite her attempt to diffuse the situation. I rejected the notion that I was discarding 5 good years of marriage, attributing the breakdown to Caroline's infidelity. I vehemently contested the characterization of our marriage as 5 good years, emphasizing that the last year lacked authenticity, especially after Caroline's admission of involvement with 35 to 4 men and her uncertainty about the paternity of her child. With the session coming to a close, Charlotte announced her intention to conduct individual sessions with each of us. Before determining the next steps, we scheduled our appointments for the following week and left the office, ignoring Caroline's calls. I made my way to my car, observing her sewing behind the steering wheel as I drove off. A sense of satisfaction washed over me, deeming it fitting for her to experience some emotional pain. Later that night, I received a furious call from Gabriella, blaming me for Caroline's condition. She conveyed Caroline's hospitalization due to an incident and accused me of mistreating her. I defended myself, asserting that I merely spoke the truth, contrasting it with Caroline's actions. Over the past year, Gabriella questioned my apparent lack of concern for Caroline's well-being, to which I responded, indifferently branding me as a heartless individual. Gabrielle emphasized that I should at least provide insurance information, reminding me that Caroline was still legally my wife, and I would be responsible for the bills. After a brief moment of reflection, I decided to visit Caroline in the hospital, acknowledging the information Emma had shared earlier. Gabriella provided me with the room details, and upon arrival, I approached the nurse, providing my insurance information and briefly discussing Caroline's condition with the doctor. Curious about the cause of the incident, I inquired with the doctor, who explained the complexities of pregnancies, leaving the specific cause uncertain, wanting to understand the timeline of the pregnancy. I learned that Caroline was approximately 8 or 9 weeks alone, leaving open the possibility that the child could have been mine. Nonetheless, I deemed it inconsequential, viewing the incident as an opportunity to proceed with a divorce after receiving assurance from the doctor regarding Caroline's well-being. I entered her room to find her distressed, tears gising in her eyes. Gabriella stood at the end of the bed, a displeasure evident, but growl from me caused her to retreat from the room facing Caroline. I acknowledged the finality of our relationship. She questioned the depth of my hatred towards her, and I admitted that in that moment it had lessened somewhat. However, I made it clear that reconciliation was out of the question. Even the breach of trust she had demonstrated, expressing my frustration. I recounted how every trip she made to the store left me questioning her interactions with the checkout clerks. I confronted her about the sudden disrespect, reminding her of the exceptional treatment she had received from me throughout our years together. She acknowledged my role as a devoted husband and lover that claimed she succumbed to the influence of others who normalize such behavior for married couples. I dismiss her explanation, emphasizing the inevitability of divorce and the futility of salvaging the relationship in tearful acceptance. She agreed to inform her lawyer. The next day, I sternly clarified that any hopes of friendship were unrealistic. Despite her apologies, I remained resolute in my decision to end the marriage. With a final glance, I added goodbye, Caroline, as I began to leave her room. As I walked away, her cries echoed behind me. Tough luck, I thought, feeling a sense of relief. A few days later, Emma called me, confirming that Caroline had dropped all objections to the divorce. Charlotte's report echoed the impossibility of reconciliation, recommending anger management for me, while the judge shared a similar sentiment. She stopped short of making it a court order. Emma successfully secured settlements from F funds, Lucas, and Henry. About a month later, she handed me the largest check I had ever seen. That's minus my fee. Of course, you noted. Certainly, I replied. I deposited the check and moved on, leaving behind the chaos of AF funds, or as I often hot of it, Sodom and Gomorrah. As it closed its doors roughly 4 months later, the fallout from the company's financial scandals became apparent as clients lost trust in its integrity. I cynically mused to myself about the reasons behind their sudden skepticism. Lucas and Henry maintained a low profile after their stint in the county jail. Eager to avoid further trouble, their reputations were tarnished, prompting a move to the West Coast. For a fresh start, Caroline and Gabriella found themselves sharing an apartment, taking up jobs at a retail store in a strip mall. Although I encountered them occasionally, I chose to ignore their presence, moving forward with my life remaining single. I ventured into the world of casual dating. Over the next couple of years, eventually I crossed paths with Scarlett Williams, a recent divorce, and we began a slow and deliberate journey of getting to know each other. Both of us had endured the pain of infidelity in our previous marriages. Sensitive to her past hurt, I made so to offer her all the support she needed in the initial stages. Our time together consisted mainly of heartful conversations and enjoyable outings for dinner and movies. Recognizing her vulnerability, I took it upon myself to engage in comforting gestures like holding hands and leisurely walks in the park. Despite feeling drawn to her, I opted to let Scarlett take the lead in our budding relationship. After a delightful dinner at her condo, she fixed me with a curious gaze, questioning if I found her attractive with a smile. I assured her of my admiration, emphasizing that it extended beyond mere physical appearance. Piqued by my lack of initiative, she teasingly asked if I prefer girls. My response left no room for doubt. Yes, friends. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Share your comments below.